It started with a baby. Not a scream. Not a witness. Not even a phone call for help. Just a baby, left alone in a car seat, on a stranger's front lawn. It was 7:15 a.m., July 29, 2025, in Tigrit, Tennessee, a farming town most people drive through without slowing down. But on that morning, one man stepped outside and saw something that stopped him cold. A child. Unharmed. Strapped in. Calm. No note. No one in sight. Just the faint sound of birds and the kind of silence that warns you something is terribly wrong. He called 911. Deputies from Dyer County arrived within minutes. The baby couldn't speak, couldn't explain, and no one came forward to claim her. She wasn't injured. She'd been cared for. Someone had taken the time to place her there safely. Which only raised one question. Where were her parents? The name on the car seat tag helped. The baby was quickly identified, and so were her parents, Adrianna Williams, age 20, and James M. Wilson, 21. Both had ties to nearby Lake County, near Reelfoot Lake. That's where deputies went next. And what they found changed everything. Inside a modest home tucked into the woods, they discovered 4 people. All shot. All dead. The baby's entire household, her mother, her father, her grandmother, and her teenage uncle, were gone. It wasn't a burglary. It wasn't random. It was a massacre. A deliberate one. The baby had been spared. Everyone else had been executed. And somewhere out there, the person responsible was still moving. The house sat back from the road, shielded by trees, just outside Tiptonville, Tennessee, not far from Reelfoot Lake. To passers-by, it looked like any quiet family home. Nothing out of place. Nothing unusual. But when deputies from Lake County entered on July 29, 2025, they knew within seconds they were walking into something else entirely. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No ransacked furniture. It didn't look like a robbery. It looked controlled. Clean. Too quiet. Then they found the bodies. 4 people, all of them members of the same family, shot and killed inside the home. Adrianna Williams, just 20 years old. The mother of the baby found abandoned hours earlier. James M. Wilson, age 21. The father. Courtney Rose, 38. Adrianna's mother. And Braydon Williams, only 15. Adrianna's younger brother. They had been executed, methodically. Police later described it as a targeted killing. There were no defensive wounds. No calls for help. No signs of struggle. Whoever entered that home, the victims likely knew them, or at least weren't afraid of them. A name surfaced quickly. One that officers in both Dyer and Lake counties already knew well. A man with a violent record. A man who'd been released just months before. A man who was already facing attempted murder charges when he walked free. And now, they feared, he'd escalated. Austin Robert Drummond. The house was sealed off. Detectives gathered shell casings and scanned for fingerprints. But in a crime this brutal, it was the silence that lingered. A whole family was gone. And the only person left alive was a baby girl too young to understand what had happened. When investigators ran the name Austin Robert Drummond, alarms went off immediately. Drummond, age 28, wasn't just familiar, he was notorious across multiple law enforcement files. His criminal history stretched back more than a decade. And it wasn't petty. At 16, he was charged with armed robbery. By his early 20s, he had served time for assault and had gained a reputation behind bars for being aggressive and unpredictable. Records show he made repeated threats against correctional officers while incarcerated. But what shocked many wasn't his past, it was that he was already out on bond when the murders occurred. Out on bond, for attempted murder. Despite that charge, despite the pattern of violence, Drummond had been released in late 2024. Less than a year later, 4 people were dead, and the child of 2 of the victims had been left alone in a car seat on someone's lawn. The timeline was brutal. And it wasn't just his criminal record that made Drummond the prime suspect. He had a direct link to the victims. According to reports, he had been dating a relative of Adrianna Williams, the young mother found dead in the home. That changed everything. This wasn't a stranger. This wasn't random. Drummond had been inside that home before. He knew the family. He knew the baby. He was trusted. And now, police believed, he had turned that trust into a weapon. A public bulletin was issued. His face and name went out across Tennessee. Residents were warned, do not approach. He is armed and dangerous. What they didn't know yet, was just how close he still was. To understand the brutality of this case, detectives had to start with the relationships. Austin Drummond wasn't a random name pulled out of a police database. He wasn't just a criminal on the run. He was someone close to the family. According to investigators, Drummond was in a relationship with a female relative of the victims. Someone who likely had intimate access to their home, their routines, and their trust. That connection made the crime feel even more calculated. He didn't break in. There were no signs of forced entry. Police believe he was let in, or at the very least, wasn't seen as a threat when he showed up. That theory would explain why there were no screams. No defensive wounds. Just 4 victims, shot and left behind, while a baby was taken and dropped off miles away. As the investigation deepened, law enforcement didn't uncover a clear motive. Not money. Not custody. Not property. At least, not yet. There were whispers of conflict, tensions between Drummond and members of the family. Arguments. Disapproval. Maybe even threats. But nothing concrete enough to predict what happened next. The district attorney later said in a statement, "We believe this was targeted. This was not random. This was a deliberate act against people he knew." Yet the most haunting part of all? He left the baby alive. Strapped safely in a car seat. Clean. Cared for. Then placed on the lawn of a stranger's house. Why? Why kill 4 people, and spare a child? Was it guilt? A message? Or just control? As the days passed and the manhunt grew, one thing became clear. Whatever his motive, Austin Drummond didn't intend to disappear quietly. The call came in at 7:15 a.m., July 29, 2025. A homeowner in Tigrit, Tennessee, reported something strange on their front lawn. A baby. Left alone in a car seat, resting just a few feet from the road. When deputies from the Dyer County Sheriff's Office arrived, they found the infant calm, alert, and unharmed. She was dressed, clean, and securely fastened in the seat, like someone had taken care to ensure she wouldn't be hurt. There were no vehicles nearby. No witnesses. No surveillance footage that immediately gave answers. But as the hours passed, investigators identified her. She was 8 months old, and her parents were listed as Adrianna Williams and James M. Wilson, the very same individuals deputies would soon find murdered, alongside 2 other family members, in Lake County, nearly 30 miles away. The baby had been the only survivor. Authorities believe she was removed from the crime scene and deliberately placed in that yard, far from where the killings took place. The motive behind that decision remains unclear. Was it mercy? Or a cover? According to law enforcement, Dyer and Lake County deputies worked quickly together to link the 2 cases. Once the murders were discovered and the baby's identity confirmed, she was placed in the care of protective services, and later reunited with surviving relatives. The home where she was found belonged to a stranger, someone with no known connection to the suspect or the victims. Investigators later described the child's survival as a miracle. But with it came a chilling weight. She had likely been inside the house when her family was murdered. She was spared. But she was present. A silent witness to the worst kind of betrayal. And now, the only hope of justice depended on catching the man who carried her away from that house, and vanished. As news of the killing spread across Tennessee, so did fear. 4 people were dead. A baby had been abandoned in a stranger's yard. And the man believed responsible, Austin Robert Drummond, had vanished. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation issued a statewide bolo, "Be on the lookout." Drummond was officially named a suspect and declared armed and extremely dangerous. Authorities warned the public, "Do not approach. Call 911 immediately." What made the situation more dangerous was what investigators couldn't confirm: what direction Drummond was headed, or who might be helping him. His car was found abandoned, days later, in West Tennessee, far from the murder scene. Inside the vehicle, authorities found no signs of a struggle. No blood. No baby items. No clue about where he went next. Then came the sightings. Surveillance footage captured a man matching Drummond's description walking through Jackson, Tennessee, wearing camouflage and carrying what appeared to be a rifle. His face was partially covered. The image circulated quickly, and the tension across rural counties turned to fear. Some counties issued shelter-in-place advisories. Schools, already on summer break, increased patrols. Residents began checking doors, windows, and barns. People were afraid, not just of Drummond, but of what he might do next. The reward for information grew by the day, surpassing $30,000. Tips came in from across the state. Some were false leads. Others were close calls. But even with dogs, drones, and coordinated law enforcement agencies, Drummond managed to evade capture for nearly a week. And the longer he stayed out there, the more people began to wonder. Was he still in Tennessee, or had he disappeared for good? Then, out of nowhere, a voice came over the line. Someone had seen him. And this time, the tip was real. 6 days had passed. 6 days of roadblocks, drone sweeps, and unanswered questions. The face of Austin Drummond was on every local TV station, every sheriff's department bulletin, every timeline across Tennessee. And still, he was gone. But on August 4, 2025, the case broke wide open, thanks to a man named Ricardo Contreras, a house painter working in Henderson, Tennessee. He was walking past a vacant building when something caught his eye. A figure, dirty, thin, crouched inside the shadow of an old industrial structure. He looked familiar. Ricardo stepped back. Took a closer look. Then picked up his phone and dialed 911. His words were simple: "I think I just saw Austin Drummond." Law enforcement moved fast. Within 15 minutes, officers surrounded the area. They cleared nearby buildings, set up perimeter units, and moved in with caution. When they found Drummond, he was unarmed, wearing worn clothes, and showing signs of fatigue. He didn't resist. He didn't run. He didn't speak. He was taken into custody without incident. Back at the station, his fingerprints confirmed the ID. The search was over. But the story wasn't. Detectives wanted to know. Where had he been for nearly a week? Who, if anyone, had helped him? And why had he spared the baby? No answers came right away. Drummond requested an attorney. The TBI announced he was being charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, felon in possession of a firearm. And the district attorney confirmed what many had feared. The death penalty was now on the table. When Austin Robert Drummond was arrested in Henderson, Tennessee, on August 4, 2025, it ended the manhunt, but not the storm. The legal system moved quickly. Within hours of his arrest, Drummond was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of aggravated kidnapping, unlawful possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. He was denied bond. The court called him a flight risk, a public threat, and likely to re-offend if released. But he wasn't the only one going down. Within days, police arrested 3 more individuals in connection to the case, believed to have helped Drummond evade capture. Tanaka Brown, Giavant Thomas, De'Ara Sanders. All 3 were charged with accessory after the fact to murder, and hindering apprehension. Police believe they may have helped hide Drummond, move him, or supply him with resources during his time on the run. None of them spoke publicly. All retained legal counsel. Meanwhile, the district attorney for Lake County, Danny Goodman, told the media that his office was pursuing the death penalty. "We are talking about the execution of an entire household. A child abandoned. 4 people taken. If this doesn't qualify as a capital case, nothing does." Court documents reveal chilling details. The victims were shot at close range. There were no signs of forced entry. And the baby had been intentionally removed from the crime scene, not as a hostage, but as a deliberate act of separation. The motive? Still unclear. But prosecutors didn't need motive to build their case. They had the bodies. They had the suspect. And they had the trail. Now, Tennessee's justice system had to do the rest. And in the eyes of many, justice wouldn't be enough. Before the crime scene. Before the manhunt. Before the courtroom. There was a family. And now, there is a void. In the days after the murders, photos of the victims began to emerge. Smiling faces. School portraits. Family snapshots taken long before their names made headlines. Adrianna Williams, 20, a young mother described by friends as quiet, protective, and loving. James Wilson, 21, a father, a factory worker, a man trying to rebuild his life. Courtney Rose, 38, Adrianna's mother. Braydon Williams, 15, still in high school. Just a kid. He loved video games and football. Their lives ended in silence, inside the walls of a home they thought was safe. At candlelight vigils across Lake and Dyer counties, friends and neighbors gathered in shock. Many wept openly. Others simply stood there, staring at the flames, unsure what to say. "My son had a heart of gold," said Braydon's father in an interview with WSMV News. "He didn't deserve this." None of them did. The community, small, rural, tightly connected, struggled to make sense of what had happened. How could a man walk into a home and kill everyone, except for a baby? And how could the system have let him walk free in the first place? Online, public outrage grew. Commenters blamed the courts. Some called for tougher parole laws. Others demanded full transparency from investigators. But no legal argument could change what had already been taken. One household. 4 generations. Wiped out in minutes. All that remained was one child, the only living witness, now in the care of relatives, too young to understand what happened, or what she lost. The house on Reelfoot Lake Road is quiet now. No lights. No tape. Just silence. But the questions? They haven't gone anywhere. What drove Austin Drummond to commit this crime? What happened inside that house in the moments before the gunshots? Why did he spare the baby? Investigators still don't have a clear motive. No confession. No explanation. And the people who might have been able to tell the full story are gone. Some believe it was personal. Others believe it was control. An attempt to erase something or someone. But even prosecutors admit, this case has holes that may never be filled. What is known is chilling enough. Drummond was out on bond for attempted murder when the killings occurred. He had a direct connection to the family. And he had a history of violence that was never truly interrupted, only delayed. Now, as he awaits trial in a Tennessee jail cell, the child he left behind is being raised without her mother, her father, or the home she once knew. She will grow up asking questions that may never have answers. And a community, once quiet, once trusting, is left wrestling with a single terrifying truth. Sometimes the danger isn't a stranger. Sometimes, it's already inside. This is where the headlines stop. But for those left behind, this story will never really end. This was the Tennessee Quadruple Murder. This was criminally untold. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Like this video to help more people see it. Comment your thoughts, every voice matters in cases like this. And if you want more real, raw, and untold stories across America, and beyond, subscribe to Criminally Untold. Because some stories don't just need to be heard, they need to be remembered.